Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin by humbly acknowledging the land which you live, learn, work, and play. It's Treaty 8 territory, traditional lands of the Korean Dene, and unceded territory of the Métis people. And this evening, my thoughts and deepest sympathies and condolences are firmly with Gail, Mark, and the family and friends of Guy Boulier, who passed away on Friday morning. Guy leaves behind a remarkable life of public service and an important legacy in Fort McMurray, the regional municipality of Buffalo, and the province of Alberta. First elected in 1986 to the City of Fort McMurray Council, Guy became the youngest mayor in Fort McMurray's history in 1992. Then Guy was even first ever mayor of the regional municipality of Buffalo after amalgamation in 1995. Beginning in 1997, Guy represented the community for over 15 years as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, holding several positions in cabinet. Born in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, Guy carried deep ties to the community served and always led with his own personal brand of passion, character, intellect, and strength. Guy will be remembered for his notable contributions in sports, recreation, education, and overall advancement of his home and favorite place, Fort McMurray in the Wood Buffalo region. In my short time as mayor, I always appreciated Guy's advice and perspective from his unique experiences cultivated over a lifetime of service. I'll miss our conversations and words of encouragement, as will many of us, I'm sure. Rest easy, Guy. While the days and months ahead will be difficult for your loved ones and everyone close to you, I know we will again have the energy to build the strong foundation you helped to create for all of us. This evening, I'd also like to take a moment to recognize how nice it is to have people representing the QP staff, business administration students from Canada College, and all the others. It's important for everyone to feel they belong here in council, and even when it's not easy. We have Councillor Cardinal, Councillor McGrath joining us on Teams this evening, and councillors, please have your cameras on for voting purposes. If anyone in attendance wishes to address council on any of the agenda items, please register now with the Legislative Services Desk, located to my right, as I will only be calling upon those who are registered to speak following your submission. Please remain seated. Yeah. You must also register prior to the start of the agenda item in which you are speaking. Registered delegations are permitted up to 5 minutes to speak, and please remain on topic. We also have Councillor Ball joining us online as well. Before we start today's meeting, I'd like to give Councillor Dogar a chance to give us an opening for the month of Ramadan starting now. Councillor Dogar.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Mayor. Extremely grateful to you, to Fort McMurrayites and all Canadians for giving us the freedom of speech to the new Canadians and bringing them equality. We are in par with others, and this is kind of this great community. This is a special month for us, Ramadan, in which we fast from first light to last light. These days in winters it is 12 hours, and sometime in summers it is 15 hours and 16 hours. Back in country the temperature is even 50 degrees centigrade, which is extremely difficult, and idea is to inculcate passion in it, that we have the patience in it, and also we realize for those who are starving or who are poor. In our part of the world, there are cases that people are even starve also at times, they're without food. It's also not only the fasting, that we have to adhere to every good teaching of the religion. All the religions are alike. No violation of human rights, speak truth, no high-handedness, no theft, etc., etc. And apart about that, there's another thing in our culture, that wherever we are, in an immigrant country like this, it is part of our faith to have the law of the land, to adhere to rules, regulation, and all those who are placed over us. Placed over us means in the hierarchy. Maybe it is a political hierarchy in the outwards. It is a part of our faith, religion, to abide by that and be a good resident of that country. Previously, we always try to be part of the mainstream, and immigrants also. Our councillor Funky Manjoko is the director of United Ways, and we in at the Markaz of Islamic Center, we do fundraisings also, and also the food bank we donate it to the, and hopefully we are going to start a new project, because charity is one of the very good worships that is in the month of Ramadan. And we are going to raise charity, start a new project in which all donations, they will not be spent anywhere else. No administration for the community. It would be only to the mainstream, to the United Ways also, to the Autism Society, to the Cancer Society, as per the decision latest. We hope that we can pay back to the community. Surely we'll do it. Thank you very much, sir, for this kind gesture of giving me the time, and thank you very much, residents, for listening me.
Thank you, Councillor Dogar. Before we adopt the agenda, does anyone wish to survey notice of motion this evening? Can someone make the motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. And that's seconded by Councillor Boussier. Thank you. I'll call for a vote. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have someone make the motion? Councillor Walkwin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that recommendations contained in items 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3 be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Walkwin. And thank you, Councillor Ball, for seconding that. I'll call for a vote. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to presentations, we have Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism, their quarterly update. I'd like to invite Kevin Weidlich, the President and CEO of Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism, which we're going to shorten soon, right? Thank you, Mr. Weidlich. Kevin, hit that microphone button. Yeah. There you go.
There we go. And now, you think it's not it would be my first rodeo or something. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and all those in attendance and watching online. I'm Kevin Weidlich, President and CEO of Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism. Yeah, it's 21 syllables if you're accounting. I'll begin with a quick introduction, followed by showcasing a few major programs advancing our strategy this quarter. And our strategy is designed to align with the Council's strategic plan, propelling it forward by driving economic growth through our collective efforts. To kick things off, I'd like to underscore that our programs stimulate economic impact over the short term and the long term. And they involve many public and private sector organizations, encouraging a pro-business environment and impacting our economy through jobs, the attraction of new investment, new visitors, and talent, new residents to our region. At the end of the day, our programs aim to improve the lives and livelihoods of residents, uplifting their overall quality of life and creating a stronger, more vibrant region. This January, we launched our newest startup YMM program. That's our business incubator, the Business Coaching Pilot Program. This program has been a huge hit, and we quickly reached 100% enrollment capacity. It's available for free for up to 30 startup YMM members, entrepreneurs, and designed to elevate them through personalized one-to-one coaching delivered by Stacey Millard. Stacey is a Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo entrepreneurial success story. She's a business coach and mentor, host of the Small Business School podcast, and community champion. And she's an inspiration to many entrepreneurs across North America, and we're fortunate to have her on board. And it's programs like this that make Startup YMM so successful. We've grown Startup YMM membership by over 60%. That exceeds more than 400 members. And this is remarkable for a community our size and speaks to its entrepreneurship spirit. Next, I'll speak about some of the exploration work underway for our industrial attraction program, currently under development. Similar to our retail and commercial attraction program, we're developing an industrial attraction program to entice larger scale industrial businesses to start, relocate, or expand their operations in our region. We're in the very early stages of this program, which requires a lot of groundwork to ensure the region is well positioned to attract and support new industries. At this stage, we're working with the RMWB and building stronger relationships with Pathways Alliance, Invest Alberta, Invest Canada, and Export Canada. Alberta Innovate's Bitumen Beyond Combustion program is one example of what we're working with. I want to preface again that we're in the exploratory phases. A lot of market research and stakeholder and rights holder engagement goes into industrial attraction. The Bitumen Beyond Combustion program creates an opportunity for industrial manufacturing of asphalt binder and carbon fiber. Bitumen-derived asphalt pellets for road building are a key product that can be manufactured here, right here in Fort McMurray. We're at the source, so we have an advantage in pursuing an opportunity like this. As this technology becomes commercialized, our region is well positioned to benefit from new businesses and jobs that it will create right here in Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo. Next, I'll highlight our recent franchise focus event. We talked a lot about attracting investors from outside the region. However, a lot of work is happening with local investors. The franchise focus provided valuable information to investors and entrepreneurs about the franchise world. It allowed us to share the same retail and commercial recruitment strategy data that we used for attracting external investors to our region. And in attendance, there were 19 locally qualified entrepreneurs ready to invest between $10,000 and $1 million. We coordinated this event with the ICSC event, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers, allowing us to pitch local investors to national brand franchisors looking for local partnerships. This closes our leakage gap and will require a combination of attracting local and external investors to meet local demand for products and services. Next, I'll share two testimonials conveying this event's impact alone. Harsh Danak is a relationship manager with BMO. The most significant benefit for him was discovering the market research that we conduct and make available to the public. He will now use it with his clients to help them make data-driven decisions in their business planning. And our second testimonial comes from Michael Robert from Willow Lake Métis Nation. Michael said that a key takeaway for him was learning useful tactics for the negotiation process with major brands. Like others, he expressed interest in attending a future franchise focus event to explore potential opportunities for the Willow Lake Métis Nation. Another successful event this quarter was the Indigenous Tourism Mini Gathering, hosted in partnership with our organization and the Indigenous Tourism Association of Alberta. More than 80 people attended, including 30 local tourism operators and a number of entrepreneurs and investors, many of whom were local. You'll notice that we've categorized tourism product development as a business and private investment attraction activity. This is one of the benefits of being an integrated economic development organization and a destination marketing organization. We take an economic development approach to growing our tourism sector, which hasn't been done before. I'll now walk us through our KPIs for 2023 and our 2024 year-to-date numbers. We're sitting at 12 qualified leads year-to-date, and we've already had 15 meetings with developers and 12 with retailers. In 2023, we reported 2 qualified leads in total for industrial attraction efforts. Sounds like a low number, but the investments are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a completely different scale. And in 2024, we're at 9 qualified leads. That's a big uptake from 2023, and we're only 1 quarter in. Leads in 2023 accounted for 32 potential new tenants or businesses. We're seeing a lot of progress in our commercial development and retail efforts. I want to draw the council's attention to one reporting enhancement that we've introduced to our commercial and retail development program. You'll see in the 2023 column that in discussion and active interest figures are smaller than in previous years. This is because we can now parse out commercial development square footage from the square footage of tenants' retail space. We're differentiating between the two. These earlier figures included both of them together. Now we're showing them separately. What does it do? It allows us to be more accurate in our numbers regarding how much retail space is available for new tenants. Tells us about the supply side. This commercial development data includes square footage for common walking paths, restrooms, storage, etc. This reporting enhancement gives us more accurate targets and allows us to better deliver on the strategy. In 2023, there was 824 square feet was discussed for development, and that's grown to just over 1.5 million square feet. That's a big jump, and that shows an increased interest in our region for investment. And the second stage of the sales funnel is the active interest category, where they're actually putting time and effort, and in some cases money, on the table to pursue a development. And that's more than from 55,000 square feet to 275,000 square feet, another big jump. Last year, we had 90,000 square feet of construction started, and so far, we don't have the data yet for 2024. That usually comes in the third or fourth quarter of the year. Next, I'll touch on square footage for commercial tenants. Some 744,000 square feet was discussed, and this year that figure is at 546. That's good because that shows progression from discussion to active interest, so that moves through a sales funnel. And there were 419,000 square feet in active interest, and that number is now grown to 542,000. Next, I'll speak to our workforce immigration support program, which has grown exponentially. When we launched the program in 2022, we saw 30 to 40 monthly applications, and now we're seeing 70 applicants for new immigrants choosing our community to reside. 70 applicants each month. The activities of this program help employers fill last year, employers filled 424 existing vacancies, and so far in the first quarter alone, we filled 122 existing vacancies. And this last program I'll report on is the Keano College International Student Recruitment and Retention Program. This program supported creating 296 jobs as of last fall. That number is still growing, and as of this year, as of this moment, there is 1,442 new international students enrolled at Keano College. This is nearly 5 times our original goal of 300 students, just over 3 years ago. That concludes my presentation, and I'd gladly take any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. I can start with a quick question. What's an example of industrial attraction program that you're now bringing forward?
So we have are you talking about like specific leads or?
Just where, basically, because I know you talked that bitumen. Is that going to be something close to town, or is that something outside of the community? So exactly. So the industrial attraction program is bigger than specifics. So the program, we're developing it, and we've actually got some funding from the federal government and provincial government to help us to do that too. So that's a good thing. Okay. So it's still early stages, but conceptually, it's targeting specific businesses and specific potential investors that would be interested in our region. So we've done an economic diversification study in very close consultation with the municipality and have identified potential targets. They might include the bitumen beyond combustion program is one of them, and there's a list of some 6 or 7 types of industries that we want to attract into the region. Okay. When we go into specifics within the region, that's mostly in industrial park areas, and that can also be in rural communities, and undoubtedly even First Nations communities have industrial parks, and we would play a supportive role in the attraction of that if the investors are finding that that's a good fit. So okay. The idea is we figured out what the industries are. The next step is figure out the specific names of the companies that we want to get into town and then go after them.
Fabrication is a good example of that, for example.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Dogar?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for giving me chance. Thank you very much, Kevin. I really respect you for being a veteran, armed forces service, 28 years that you put in, and a lot of good things you are doing in the community. Yesterday, we had the honor that your board of directors came here. We had discussions, and we see many positive things. One question I asked yesterday also, I asked you also, that we have got 1,400 students. You know, I know which part of the world they are. I am from that part of the world. They have come here to work also and continue studies or do something. The primary their job is, in their mind is to work and ultimately get immigration. And so many others are also laid off in the oil industry, and you see every day. So as a economic development, your main job is to keep the town busy. So do you intend planning or making a cell there where all you can find some jobs? You can direct the jobless people towards that place so that people are not in a distress.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dogar, and to the chair and all. That's an important exercise that we must undertake. The specifics, we have many community partners that can probably do the job board or the job fair piece, but we are committed to helping to connect the dots. So many of the graduates of the Kiano International Student Partnership Program will find jobs. I've sat down with the president of Kiano College to discuss this very same topic. And the challenge can sometimes be a mismatch of the program that the student is in and the jobs that are available. Kiano College is aware of that risk. So we're working with Kiano College to make sure that the right skills are matching the potential job market. And then we're also working with employers to identify what are those specific skills that are needed. We call this the workforce development strategy, and we've already started the research to draw that, to connect those dots to Kiano College. And I'm increasingly confident that this will be a very successful venture.
Thank you, Councillor Dogar. Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and thank you for the presentation, Kevin. So under the board's 5-year economic development and tourism strategy, I looked at the list of stakeholders and rights holders in regards to action number 92. I do not see Conklin Métis Local 193, Fort McKay Métis Nation, and Willow Lake Métis Nation on the list. Is there a reason for this?
So I think you're referring to the early stage consultations that happened some 2.5 years ago, if I recall correctly.
No, actually, it's the report that was given to us a couple of days ago. It's your 5-year strategic plan.
Yeah, so the 5-year plan was developed 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, we had extended the invitation to all of the Indigenous nations, both Métis and First Nations. And those that participated in the development of the plan at that time were identified. Since then, we have engaged with all, including the Conklin Métis. In fact, the Conklin Resource Development Association, I just recently gave a presentation to and had a discussion around aligning with their strategic plan in Conklin, and we'll continue that conversation with them. Likewise, we have very good relationships with the Fort McKay Métis, and I think you mentioned a third.
Yeah, Conklin Métis Local 193,
Yeah.
Fort McKay Métis Nation, and Willow Lake Métis Nation.
And and as a matter of fact, I just mentioned Michael Robert from Willow Lake Métis Nation. So in the early days, we were a relatively new organization. Okay. Much of this is about relationship building and getting to know people. And over time, we've been able to develop relationships with all the communities, and that continues to progress.
So they will be part of your list of stakeholders, correct?
Oh, they already are. It was
okay.
just happened to be that list was the list that was used to develop the plan.
Yeah, it was outdated.
Yeah.
Okay, I also, in regards to your tourism strategy, Can you give me some examples of your accomplishments in this regard?
Yeah, so thank you, Councillor Stroud. We're quite excited about a number of things. So I mentioned the Indigenous mini tourism gathering. So tourism is a long-term exercise, takes years, and tourism in the region is underdeveloped. And so the exercise is to develop the tourism sector such that we have a strong and vibrant sector. So that'll take years, and it depends on tourism operators and entrepreneurs to do the things that they need to do to be market ready, and ultimately what we call export ready, where we can market their offerings to international tourists. So some of the accomplishments are only steps along that very long path. So for example, the Indigenous Tourism Mini Gathering is being done in regions across all of Alberta. And in our region, we've actually had the largest uptake of Indigenous tourism operators and the largest amount of participation in the industry. Also, the entrepreneurial support programs that we run through Startup YMM, we offer those to Indigenous tourism operators, and some of whom are able to accelerate their business. A good example of that is Ginger's Bannock House. So Ginger has participated in all of our entrepreneurial programming, and she's been able to accelerate her business. And in fact, she was just in Ottawa at the Indigenous Tourism Association, the International Indigenous Tourism Conference in Ottawa, and showcasing her experiences, her culinary experiences. The restaurant industry is part of the tourism industry. So those are, just a few examples of the early stage engagements that we're doing. We've also established recently an Indigenous Tourism Council, which we've invited a number of Indigenous entrepreneurs that are in the tourism sector to give us advice as to what their needs are, so we can properly connect them in. There's one great example, the Willow Lake Métis. They received a $55,000 grant from Indigenous Tourism Alberta to develop their buffalo patch and some specific experiences. So our role is really in tourism development is to connect dots and to help the tourism operators accelerate and grow.
So as a counselor, am I able to get an updated report on that information?
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Councillor Ball?
Thank you. Through the chair, I wanted to touch on this tourism piece a little bit more. My question's, what types of tourism are you targeting? Is it events? Is it venues? Ecotourism? What's the target? You have to start somewhere.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And absolutely good point. So you do have to start somewhere, and you have to focus on specifics. Otherwise, you're not going to achieve anything. So our specifics are straightforward. The first one is sport tourism attraction, and that would be single sport tourism events. Think of it like championship finals for various types of events. We provided support on the bid for the baseball championships, for example. So attract as many of those types of qualifying championship type events that drive people to come to Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, that drives visiting friends and family into the region. So that's one very specific focus area that we're spending our time and effort on. The second one is Indigenous tourism experiences, which is needed to create a cluster of Indigenous tourism operators so that we can market the region. And that is meant to be built around something like an iconic experience, preferably run by an Indigenous organization, and ideally with a Northern Lights focus. So think of it as a hub and spoke model where you have an iconic experience like a spa or a Northern Lights viewing platform or something like that, where we're encouraging investors to build something like that, such that many smaller scale entrepreneurial operators can then provide services to visitors within the region. This is a long-term play. This is a 10-year play. This is the focus. We have a tourism development strategy very specifically developed. We did it in partnership and in consultation with Travel Alberta. Travel Alberta is an expert in the field, and they've identified our region as one of the highest growth potential regions in Alberta. In fact, the highest growth potential. To give you an idea of the scale, I'm going off the top of my head, roughly today, there's about $160 million of visitation spending in Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, and the goal is to grow that to larger than 270 million visitor spend within our region by 2035. And that's our piece of Travel Alberta's plan to more than double the visitor spend in Alberta, which is roughly 10.7 billion this year, to over 25 billion in 2035 per year.
Yeah, that's probably a little more than I was looking for, but one of the things, I was speaking with Tanny from the province recently, and the province keeps preaching tourism. Like, it's an old song, it's an old dance, and it's been going on and on for a long time, and it doesn't ever seem to get off the ground. And I'm trying to understand what the roadblocks are. I mean, I'll pick something like fishing lodges. There's nobody operating fishing lodges out of Fort McMurray, and there are a pile of them in our province. They're just not open. Like, has anyone knocked on their doors and said, what do you need? Like, are you actively doing this? Because it doesn't seem to me like the province is doing it, or we are.
Well, thanks for the question. The short answer is yes, we are. And within Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, I know of 8 hunting and fishing lodges, and I've been to 3 of them. And our team has connected with most of them. So yes, we are. Good example: Andrew Lake Lodge, Gypsy Lake Lodge. We also know of certain tourism investors that are looking to expand their own lodges. So your point of the advancement of tourism, yes, it has been stifled. It's been particularly stifled within our region for a whole bunch of other factors. But there are regulatory hurdles that exist. We've identified them. Travel Alberta has also identified them. Much of them have to do with parks and rec and environmental hurdles, particularly around lake shores. So there are hurdles at play.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I own one, so.
But right, I do want to underscore. Yes, we work with the lodges. A good example is. Andrew Lake Lodge was inspired by the work that we were doing around Northern Lights. They started with by only being open during the hunting and fishing seasons, call it roughly half of the year, and now they're open year-round, and they offer a Northern Lights viewing experience. So that's an expansion of services by one lodge.
No, okay, that's fair. No, I just know one of the challenges is the leases with the province, and I was speaking to Tanya about it because they'll only do a 5-year lease, and nobody's investing millions of dollars in a lodge if they can only get a 5-year guarantee. So I think that's something maybe your group can advocate to the province, that we need to look at that so that these leases can be longer, so that businesses want to invest, because 5 years isn't long enough.
I couldn't agree with you more, Councillor, and that is definitely something that we advocate for.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Thank you, Kevin, for the report. I'm back to my usual question, and maybe we are not so patient enough, but I'm still looking forward to when we begin to see things other than reports and figures in this region. I know, no doubt, there has been a lot of work being done, but in terms of physically seeing some changes, I'll use the example of the downtown area. The empty spaces, if you could speak to any changes or developments, those vacant places being filled. I know it's not going to be easy, but I just wanted something back in terms of, some report in terms of those kind of things.
Thank you, Councillor Banjoko. The process is always complicated and requires everything. So when I say everything, I mean we have to do reports, we have to do data, we have to do research, and we have to present that to investors so they can make sound decisions. So we have to do all of it. Also, at the same time, some things start to percolate and get going. So, for example, in 2023, 23 new businesses opened up in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. 23 new businesses opened up as a result of the commercial and retail attraction, not as a result, but the commercial retail attraction program provided services to those 23 businesses to be able to invest within our region. So that's 23 new businesses. Some of them were in Peter Pond Mall, and many are familiar with the various announcements, Sephora, for example.
Yes.
PetSmart, for example. The larger scale developments is measured in years. And we're only a 1 or 2 years in, and this is like 6 or 7 years. You recall the proponent for the Parsons Creek development, Allard Developments, at around this time last year, they mentioned that it will take a long period of time for the due diligence to be completed, and even then, it is 5, 6, or 7 years into the future before we actually see buildings. So that's the time frame that's required.
Yeah.
When we talk about downtown, we have been leaning into downtown as well, and I'm happy to share that our work with Keano College has inspired Keano College to put their Riedel property, the 5-acre property along the Clearwater Drive, onto the market. That request for expression of interest was spearheaded by Keano. They own the land, and that just closed just last week. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the results of that specific opportunity were. So again, yeah, it does take patience, but there is activity happening, and I'm very confident that we will see the ultimately the new stores.
Okay. Through the chair, my second question is about jobs in this region, and if there's any possibility of you strategizing, matching people with jobs or jobs with people, that kind of, I think that might be helpful, because there's a lot of people looking for jobs and lots of business owners or industry looking for workers. So I think there's a gap there. I mentioned it yesterday, and I hope that you might take that as a feedback of something, if it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Banjoko. Yes, and in fact, we have heard this from various quarters as well, other places. I do think it needs to be a priority. Our board is meeting later this week to discuss strategy and overall implementation and priorities. I'm very confident that that will emerge as a very high priority. I personally noticed that we're seeing a skills mismatch. Yeah. And that's the issue.
Yes.
So we need to figure out a way to target the skills that are needed within our region and either attract them or, as I mentioned to Councillor Dogar a moment ago, ensure that mismatch is done at the post-secondary level or is addressed at the post-secondary level so that graduates can graduate into jobs for which they're trained.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Bajoko. Do we have any other questions from Council? Councilor Cardinal?
Thanks, Mayor. Hey, Kevin, I seen that you're having a numerous amount of meetings. I guess my question would be, how far are we to start getting some bigger retail stores here in Fort McMurray so we could obviously employ more people, spend our money locally, bring that downtown revitalization together, and how's that all look with that?
Yeah, well, thank you. So similar question that I just received from Councillor Banjoko. So again, this is a 5 to 7 year process. We're 2 years into it. I'm confident that Parsons Creek development will end its due diligence period successfully. The downtown, as I mentioned, the Riedel property that Keano College has put onto market, we'll see what the results of that are. We continue to market the region to potential developers. We know that there is increased interest. In fact, the feedback that we're getting from the developers and from retailers is, yes, we want to be in Fort McMurray. Let's get these developments underway so that we have a place to go to. So the key is to get this development underway, and I know that planning and development has moved heaven on earth to make it as easy as possible for developers to invest in our region. So when it takes all of us to put this together. It's not just an economic development corporation that's able to attract the amount of investment that needs to come in. The community needs to be helpful to it and demonstrate that demand. And also at the same time, the municipality is doing a great job in removing any sort of potential barriers to investment and making the ease of investment, making the ease of doing business a priority. And that's already taking place. It's a long-winded answer for you, Councillor, but in essence, the progress is happening. This is measured in years.
Thanks. Parcel of land that's in Rydell and Parsons, like how many stores or what's the vision for what's going to go there from economic development, or is it just communication to bring that stuff in? But also, well, actually, answer that one first.
Yeah, well, thank you, Councillor. So the Parsons Creek development is something that this isn't unique. It's the developers looking at large format retail, so think of it as very large box stores, and with several small stores and restaurants and smaller retail stores clustered around it. So think of it something like a larger scale than what you've seen in Fort McMurray, but a smaller scale, say, than we might see in South Edmonton Common, for example, but much smaller scale. That would take place at, say, Parsons Creek, and that's what's being contemplated and being planned for. The Rydell property, Keano College is open to proposals, so they've asked for developers to provide ideas around potential mixed-use development, which would include some residential, some retail, some commercial space. That would be the vision for that. So that would also include increased amenities. All of this is meant to tie together to make Fort McMurray an attractive place for new residents, to overcome any of the desire to spend outside of the community, keep spending within the community, and to increase the overall amenities for the residents.
Thanks, Kevin. I guess my next question would be, I guess the sense of the community, what's their feedback on what stores they're wanting to bring to Fort McMurray? Do you have that answer?
Yes, I do, Councillor. So we've done 2 detailed research surveys to identify the top 5 retailers. None of them are surprise to anyone. I have to go off the top of my head. I'm looking back at Lisa. She can probably whisper in my ear if I'm wrong. But we know that the top 5 include Winners Home Sense, Costco, Home Depot, a Walmart Supercenter, an expansion of that, those kinds of businesses. Those are usually top of mind. And then there's a list of like restaurants. Many of the national brand restaurants, many people will, it's the typical ones that you would think of. So yeah, so we have that detailed information. We sit down with developers and with retailers and we show them this is what the market demand is. Here is the top 5, in fact, the top 15 types of brands that our community is seeking.
Okay. That's all I got for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cardinal. Do you have any other questions for Mr. Weidlich? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Kevin. Now also, I want to, most of you weren't here, we started the meeting. I want to thank the QP members for joining us this evening and members of the public. It's required or signed by law. For tonight's meeting under Schedule A of Procedure Bylaw, I'll be allowing signs in council chamber this evening as long as they're respectful and no profanity. And all participants, including council, administration, attendees, are expected to show dignity and respect during the meeting. And this includes how and when we speak. It includes silencing devices or leaving the room when you need to use your phone and speaking only when called to do so. So I'd like to thank everyone helping us make that happen tonight. Thank you already. And thanks, Mr. Weidlich. We'll now move on to the public hearing for land use bylaw amendment, consolidated sign regulations. Before declaring the legislative public hearing open, here an overview of the process. The public hearing will be open, followed by an introduction of the item by administration and questions from council. We'll then move into written submissions and hear verbal submissions from any speakers present, followed by questions of council. To finish, you'll hear closing statements, then the hearing will be declared closed. It's important to remember to gather all information prior to making a decision of this hearing. Councillor Weigel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need to recuse myself due to pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Weigel. I hereby declare the public hearing opened at 6:46 p.m. I'd like to invite Amanda Heides and Such Chinook, Planning and Development Services, to provide the introduction and opening statement, please. Councillor Walkman?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, but we're having a hard time hearing on this side. If you can just speak up in your mic and in the presenters,
super.
please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, Amanda.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Amanda Heides, Acting Director of Planning and Development, and with me this evening is Such Chandyuk, Manager of Development Planning, and Brett Williamson, Planner 2. We are here this evening to present to you the proposed signage amendments within the land use bylaw. The format of this presentation is to highlight the engagement feedback we have received, followed by proposed solutions. Administration has recently updated the signage section within the land use bylaw. This project timeline was accelerated based on recent community discussions and to address Council's July 11, 2023 Council motion concerning paid advertising, also known as third-party advertising. Administration co-hosted a public engagement in November 2023 with the Chamber of Commerce to discuss signage in the region and to receive feedback from businesses and stakeholders. Based on this information, discussions had and best practices, along with previous community engagement between 2018 and 2023, administration has updated the signage section to meet the needs of both residents and businesses. Before we get started, I want to highlight key terms that we will be referring to in the presentation. First party refers to advertising on the same site as the subject business and is used for business identification purposes. Third party refers to paid advertising. Billboard signs refer to a large sign primarily used for third-party paid advertising. Freestanding sign stands independently of a building and is utilized to identify on-site businesses. These are often seen at plazas and malls. Fascia sign refers to signage on a building's exterior wall. Portable sign refers to a temporary sign often seen outside of grocery stores, for an example. And election sign refers to any sign connected with the holding of a vote. The next few slides focus on feedback from the public, businesses, and council. Planning and Development held a series of open houses and surveys from 2018 to 2021 to gather public feedback. Overall, people preferred no digital signage in residential areas, digital signs to be 200 meters away from residential areas, limit sign brightness, and allow third-party advertising options. In addition, we also hosted targeted engagements with signage companies and business owners from November 2022 to November 2023. In general, businesses feel current regulations are too complicated and restrictive. The same rules should apply throughout the region. Enforcement should be prioritized to ensure fairness and a level playing field for businesses, and third-party advertising should be allowed. Some stakeholders share their view that portable signage should have a limited duration and be temporary signage solution only. Some stakeholders also shared concerns regarding third-party advertising on buildings. Administration understands that Council's priority is to balance community concerns with business needs. Likewise, new signage regulations should be fair and equitable to the business community, including the approach to enforcement. To address community concerns, administration plans to simplify language, provide flexible signage regulations, standardize the bylaw, creating the same rules for urban and rural areas, allow third-party advertising on billboard and freestanding signs, allow for advertising integrated into murals, and actively enforce signage rules. We want to keep things simple. Today, the signage regulations are divided into 3 sections. By consolidating into one, the bylaw becomes more user-friendly. Administration recommends allowing third-party advertising throughout the entire region on billboards and freestanding signs. Today, no paid advertising is allowed in the urban service area, with the exception of Center Fireplace. Only rural billboards are legally permitted to display paid advertising. By changing this and by allowing businesses to display paid advertising, we are responding to their needs. However, please note that administration does not recommend third-party advertising on portable signs or fascia signs on the exterior walls of buildings, which we will explain later in the presentation. Businesses want options for billboards in the urban service area, and administration does support this. It is worth noting that residents are concerned about billboards located near residential properties and are worried about the impacts these signs will have on their livelihood. To balance this concern, limitations on proximity to residential uses will be established, including sign brightness. The main changes for billboards include allowing them throughout the region and increasing the size to 23 meters square. Businesses find existing sign regulations confusing and want more flexible options for freestanding signs, including digital components and allowing for third-party advertising on them. The main changes for freestanding signs is to allow them on smaller lots, allow more per parcel, and allow third-party advertising, including digital. This will better support the business needs, creating an extra revenue stream through paid advertising. While some stakeholders expressed the desire to allow for third-party advertising on buildings, the overall sentiment was that this could cause confusion for customers as they may not understand what businesses are offered inside the building, and therefore a fascia sign should be used for identification purposes only. Allowing third-party advertising on exterior walls risks visual clutter and does not align with the principles of beautification. To address these concerns, the proposed bylaw does not allow third-party advertising on buildings. The main changes for fascia signs is to allow for digital options and to establish the same regulations throughout the entire region. Portable signage in this context is for private land only. Portable signs should be viewed as a temporary sign solution only. For the purpose of this presentation, we're focusing on portable signs on private land only. There will be no changes to the existing non-for-profit signs on municipal land, continuing the municipality's support for community groups. The main changes for portable signs include shortening the approval period from a 1-year term to a 6-month term, reinforcing the temporary nature of portable signs. Administration proposes third-party advertising not be permitted on portable signs and that only first-party signage is permitted, supporting on-site business activity. This is in alignment with other cities and the desire to maintain a clean and orderly community. It is also in alignment with Council's beautification efforts. Election sign regulations will remain the same. Administration has also confirmed we are in alignment with provincial regulations for signs placed along highways. Election signs are considered temporary in nature and are a permitted use in all land use districts requiring no development permits. As a reminder, current regulations limit display of election signs between noon on nomination day to 72 hours after the polls close on election day. Placement of election signs in school districts will only be permitted outside of school pickup and drop-off areas to ensure the safety of students and parents. The proposed bylaw aims to create flexible signage. Up to 10% of the mural area to include advertising. New fence regulations now allow businesses to have first-party identification signs on fences. This approach is in alignment with other cities and municipalities in Alberta. Revised window sign regulations to be more flexible for businesses and allowing up to 40% of the total window area to have sign. Roof signs, 1 roof sign per building facade will be allowed throughout the region, and the sign height of 4 meters from the roof line and sign area of 4 meters square. Multiple stakeholders, including sign companies, businesses, and residents, have expressed a desire to see more compliance for signage. In response to this, administration will shift to a proactive approach to signage compliance and ensure fairness throughout the region. In addition, a new sign impound section for signage on municipal land will allow peace officers to remove unlawful signs. Ultimately, we're striving for orderly development that is fair and equitable for the community. Administration is proposing a 3-phase incremental approach to signage compliance with the implementation of this bylaw amendment. Phase 1 will be the longest of the 3 phases and focuses on proactive education and familiarizing the community with bylaw changes. Businesses and sign owners will be encouraged to apply for development permits and remove non-compliant signage. Phase 2 will be the first step of the formal compliance process, and administration will issue warning letters for signs that are still non-compliant. Phase 3 is the final stage of the process where stop orders will be issued for signs that remain non-compliant, followed by fines and possible court injunctions. Administration is hoping to avoid this phase, focusing on proactive communication with businesses. In closing, administration's philosophy on signage regulation has shifted from heavily regulated, confusing, and restrictive to more flexible, consistent, and fair options for signage, supporting both businesses and community needs of the region. Thank you, and this concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Amanda. Do you have any questions from Council? Councillor Ball?
Thank you. Through the chair. Just a few questions for, I guess, clarity. Billboards. So if, as I heard, we'd be allowing billboards throughout, I guess, the urban service area. Was that correct?
Through the chair to the question, it would be throughout the region.
Okay, so throughout the region, but would that include the urban service area?
Yes, that's correct.
So within the urban service area, where could you put a billboard?
We're going to have, such is going to outline the regulations as to where they could go. They would be permitted throughout the entire urban service area with regulations to ensure that there's proper separation and to ensure that they're not in residential areas, for example.
Through the chair to Councillor Paul, billboards would be located 100 meters from a district containing residential uses, 30 meters from another permanent sign, 5 meters off of a road, and 150 meters from a billboard sign or a freestanding sign along highway, including but not limited to Highway 63, 69, and 881.
So the 3 highway corridors would be one example. There are already signs there, but I have a little experience with how those signs got installed. But that's the highways corridor. And from my previous experience with them, they don't want billboards there and they won't allow them.
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, any of the signage that is installed along highways, they are referred to.
I realize that. I mean future. I realize the old ones are grandfathered. I get that. But future, Highway 63, 69, and 881, I don't think they want billboards. That's what we were told in the past. So have they changed their mind on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, any of the billboards or signage along highways is typically referred to province for commentary prior to us approving it. And should Alberta Transportation raise concerns about it, the permit could be refused, in which case it could be appealed to SDAB, Subdivision Development Appeal Board, or Municipal Government Board. But for the most part...
But ultimately they have final say.
Absolutely, yes.
Right, okay, that's what I thought. So the idea of having billboards, let's pick Thickwood as an example. Where would be a spot you could put them in Thickwood? I mean, we're going to put them in front of the gas stations. We're going to put them in front of all the parks. Is that what the plan is, or is that the idea?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, billboards would be allowed on private property till the time they meet the regulations in the bylaw. So like I said, 100 meters from any district that has residential uses, 150 meters away from any permanent sign or billboards or freestanding signs, and 30 meters from any permanent signs. If there are spots or locations that prospective property owners could identify where they can put billboards, they would be allowed on private property, including commercial properties.
Okay, and I figured commercial was probably the main target. Have you looked at maybe made a bubble diagram of some areas that it might work? I'm just curious how many potentially we could have in, say, Thickwood or Timberlea, considering it's mostly residential.
Through the chair, we have not worked out a bubble diagram, but there are plenty of properties that we know of that could accommodate a billboard.
Okay. Well, I've got one question about third-party advertising for, what do you call them, front-facing, inward-facing signs. Is it my belief or my understanding that on a fence, they will no longer be permitted?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, interior-facing signage is exempt from a development permit, but the definition of interior signage is, let me read it here. It means sign displaying messaging for audience either within a building or outdoors, primarily directed to an audience attending an event where there is some form of restriction that could prevent general public from entry. So if there is a lot that has signage placed on fence, but the signage is viewable from outside of the public property, outside of the lot, then that would not be permitted. Internal signage primarily means something that can only be seen from inside a building or inside a lot.
So you could be basically several hundred feet or even 1 foot away from the property. If you could see the sign and it was a third-party advertising, it would not be permitted.
Through the chair, that is correct. There has to be a barrier to the entrance.
Okay, so here's my question then. Relative to that, what do we do about sponsorships? We have signs all over the place for various companies that support youth sports and things of that nature, like Trappers Football or whatever. You've seen Father Merck Field, where there's a whole row of signs that are inward facing and outward facing, one to the field, one to Thickwood Boulevard. And the sign is there to show that that corporation or company supports the use of the field, the sporting organizations that utilize it, and they obviously donate some money to keep those programs in play. But they do get the advantage of having the sign, which is ultimately advertising. So are those going to be banned as well?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, till the time the sign is displayed inwards in a way where the internal audience of a field is able to look at it, it would be allowed. But as soon as it starts to face the street, it would be prohibited.
Yeah. So on a square field, if you put the signs all facing inside, if you stand on the one end of the field or the other, you will always see the sign from a road. There's a road on each side.
Through the
one
chair.
On one side of the road, like you'll be able to see the sign. It won't be super visible, it'll be 100 yards away, but you'll still be able to see the sign. So at what point do we determine that that's not acceptable? That's where I'm struggling with this.
Through the chair, if like I said, if there's a barrier to the entrance, and the sign is inward facing in case of a baseball field, it would be allowed. I mean, the purpose of these regulations is to ensure that we do not allow for signage clutter. Till the time the signage is installed with the intent of the bylaw, that meets the intent of the bylaw, it would be allowed. Like I said, the idea is to regulate signage, not prohibit signage all through the community.
Okay, I guess, well, my one question about that, I guess then, do we put these user groups at risk of losing sponsorships with this?
To the chair, that would not be a question for me. It would depend on the user groups and the companies that are sponsoring those user groups. In terms of signage, like I mentioned, till the time they're facing inwards, they would be allowed.
I think you know where I'm going with this. I would hate to lose a youth sporting program over a sign. That's my point. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Dogar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me opportunity. Thank you very much, presenters. Very nice presentation and a lot of efforts you people have put in. I attended a community engagement also a few months back, and since then I feel that you people are all out to put in more efforts. My question is, podium signs, are they on the poles which are erected? Please confirm me, podium signs.
Through the chair to Councillor Dogar, we do not have podium signs in here. Do you mean freestanding signs, the signs that are installed?
I read, you see, podium signs in between the presentation which I had.
Through the chair to Councillor Dogar, I think you're referring to podium signs in line with freestanding signs. Freestanding signs are typically allowed on commercial premises. Previously, they were only allowed for identification purposes. Now, freestanding signs could have a digital component, and up to 20% of the freestanding sign could be used for third-party advertising.
Okay. Here, my question is that there are signs which are on the poles. You know, they give information to the visitors, to the tourists, who is coming for delivery, all those businesses which are in that compound. So that also gives a good look also that help the residents or the delivery drivers or the tourists. Are you thinking to promote that sort of signs or not?
Through the chair, I think you're talking about the identification signs. Some of those signs that are installed outside of a, say, condominium corporation that are primarily used to identify a street or a complex would still be allowed. They would still be there as they were in the previous bylaw.
Do you take some taxes from them also, some charges also for putting them, because that is on the public property?
Through the chair to Councillor Dogar, typically if they're installed on private property, if it's a private sign, there would be a fee associated with the sign application. Other than that, if it's allowed on, if it's onto municipal property, like an identification sign for a subdivision, there wouldn't be a fee associated with it.
Okay. Another my question is that you people say third party not allowed, third party signs not allowed. If the owner doesn't have any objection, why should we as a municipality should have objection to that?
Through the chair to Councillor Dogar, we are saying third-party signage is allowed through billboards and freestanding signs. It is limited in terms of where and how you can have third-party signage, but it is through this bylaw we are promoting third-party signage. We are opening avenues for businesses to have revenue streams through signage all through the community, all through the region.
I understand some of the signage we are prohibiting it, which are along the fences or towards the main streets. You know, as long as there's no objection by the community, by the residents, I don't think so we as a municipality should object to it.
Through the chair to the question, in terms of prohibiting third party to main streets, we're not prohibiting it to main streets per se. We are essentially proposing that third party advertising is permissible on billboards and on the freestanding or podium signs, as you refer to them.
Fine. About the grandfathering. So you intend going in the past, I think 5 years? This is the first time we are approving a bylaw?
Through the chair to the question, in terms of grandfathering, that's something that's not on the table. What we're looking at is setting a clearer, more easily comprehensible or understandable land use bylaw that will regulate signage. Prior to this being approved, third-party advertising is not allowed in the urban service area. If this gets approved this evening, third-party or paid advertising will be permitted moving forward, given certain regulations.
So my question is, what about the signs which have already been signed which have already been made, would we, as a municipality, by virtue of this bylaw, would like to remove those signs?
Through the chair to the question, if this gets approved tonight, the signs that are not compliant with the new regulations, we have an enforcement plan. So essentially, we'll be doing an overarching business notification. We'll be sending out postcards of some sort to every business in the region so they understand that these regulations are in place, that they also have the ability to take advantage of some of the third-party advertising regulations. The next step is we'll be sending out notifications to those businesses that are not compliant. We'll be giving them 3 months to remove the signs. If they're not removed, the next step would be a warning letter. If they're not removed on the date that's posted there, the next step would be fines. And from there, the next step would be a court injuncture. So through this approval, if it occurs this evening, there may be some signs that automatically become in regulation if they're in alignment with the land use bylaw. If they're not in alignment with the regulations of the land use bylaw, planning and development and bylaw will be addressing it to ensure fair, equitable, and a level playing field for businesses in the region.
Okay, fine. For future, this bylaw is okay, but for the backdated, those who have already made the signs and they are there for months and years, probably it is little inconvenience to the residents. This is my point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And through the chair, just to address that, any signs that were put up that are third party before today, if this gets approved today, they weren't compliant. They weren't legal. Third party advertising is not legal in the urban service area. Thank you.
I thank Councilor Dogar. Councilor Boussier?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bowman, through the chair, to Amanda and her team. First of all, thanks for all the work on this one. I guess just like to go a little bit further with Councilor Dogar and what you had mentioned about infractions. I'm assuming that most complaints will be consumer-driven. Bylaw is not going to be driving around looking for non-conforming or illegal signs, or will they?
Through the chair to the question, typically we're complaint-based. For the purpose of this particular item or issue, we will be looking at more of a proactive approach and identifying businesses that aren't following the new regulations, and we will be enforcing on those properties. Okay, they will not be solely complaint-based.
Okay. So I know in reading your report, some of it, I think a digital sign has to be minimum 6 seconds. So does that mean someone's going to be going around and timing each ad? And the other thing was, I think if it's within a numbered highway, it has to be outside of 800 meters, and it's got to go through Alberta Transportation. So how do we enforce something like that if someone just puts a sign up and doesn't go through Alberta Transportation?
Through the chair to the question, as part of the permit requirement, signs are circulated to Alberta Transportation. So that would be the opportunity where they would review that permit that comes in. In the case where there's a sign that's just erected without any permits, that would be on our bylaw team to identify that that's been put up and to enforce it. In relation to the timing of the digital signage, likely we wouldn't have someone out there timing, to be honest, but if there were enough complaints where it becomes a distraction, then that's something that we would have to action.
Okay, so I guess that gets to the whole enforcement. So if a local business owner has a sign that's not compliant or non-conforming, how long would it take for that sign to eventually come down? You mentioned there's 3 steps. One is a letter, I think, and then it ends up in court. So, I mean, there's money at stake for some advertisers that have paid to be on someone's building or whatever that may or may not tomorrow get a letter, and they've rented this sign for a year or 6 months. And so, like, can you walk me through the process on when this sign actually is taken down?
Through the chair to the question, I'm going to pass this as such, but before he takes it, we do recognize that there are a number of signs that are currently not in compliance. We also recognize that businesses may have collected some advertising funds through that, and we want to be sensitive to it. If the bylaw does get approved tonight, there wouldn't be immediate enforcement in terms of removing signs or issuing warning letters or fines within the next couple of weeks. We're trying to take a reasonable approach to give people the time necessary to try to arrange for proper compliance compliance, but such can sort of outline what those steps are and ultimately how long it could take to have a sign that's non-compliant removed.
Through the chair to Councillor Bussier, our intention with enforcement is that most of the property owners would, once they identify that their sign is not in compliance, proactively reach out to municipality and apply for development permits. If the sign could not be permitted through that process, then municipality will try to work, administration will try to work with the sign owners to give them reasonable time. Warning letters, depending on the complexity of the situation, could range from 21 days to sometimes months. And once the warning letter is issued, it's typically issued with a specified time. And then the next step would be the stop order, which is appealable. In case of a signage where the property owner does not really want to work with the municipality, it could take from 3 to 5 months. That is not including the appeal period. I'm calculating it based on 3 months of time with municipality working with the businesses to get the signs down or giving them time to sort of work through it. And then 21 days of warning letter period, followed by 21 days of stop order, after which time the municipality can get into issuing penalties and fines and moving to court to seek injunctions against those signs. So 3 to 5 months is something that I would reasonably think it would take for a municipality to sort of see a difference out in the community.
Okay, through the chair, appreciate that. So do we have fines that are clear and defined? Like if I'm an owner and I don't take the sign down the first week, I'm fined $50, second, like do we have something? Because obviously we've had non-compliant or non-conforming signs forever. Not sure why they're still out there if we just didn't enforce, or the people have ignored the letters. So I guess, how is it any different today than it's going to be if the bylaw is passed tomorrow? Like,
through the chair to Councillor Bussier, we haven't really issued stop orders per se to a lot of these commercial businesses pending this bylaw. Once the stop orders are issued through Section 37 of the Land Use Bylaw, the municipality administration has the authority to issue up to $10,000 a fine per day. That's the limit that we have in the land use bylaw, and I think that's a pretty hefty amount for us to sort of deal with signage. The land use bylaw does give us the authority to sort of impose fines up to $10,000 per day on something that has had a stop order and is still non-compliant.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bussier. Councilor Grandison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to follow up with Councilor Bussier's line of questioning, because I'm going to take it from this perspective. If I'm a smart guy and I have something, I'm going to sell somebody advertising on my building, and it's going to take anywhere, whatever amount of time before it's identified, and a stop order comes. It sounds like I can get 3 to 4 months worth of rent out of this before anything happens. At which point in time, if I continue to be smart, I take the sign down, I wait for a month, and I start all over again. And then it's going to take 3 to 4 months, and then I take the sign down, wait for a month, and I start all over again. That's what it sounds like. So it sounds like a pretty big hole or gap that could occur. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just in terms of what Councilor Bussier was saying, it sounds like that could happen. Is that accurate?
Through the chair to Councillor Grandison, I do not see it that way. The first 3 months that we are going to be allowing is only for the current signage that's existing out there right now. If someone was to put up signage tomorrow, we could approach them tomorrow itself and give them a warning letter. The 3 months time that we're talking about is primarily with respect to the signage that's out in the community as we speak right now. Okay. Going forward, if someone was to sort of put up new signage, we can address it right then and there.
Okay, so whoever bought the Bridgeport, they put some signs up on that building. It's not legal. They're going to get a warning. How long before they actually have to comply before there's a fine starting tomorrow after this is passed? What's that time limit?
Through the chair to Councillor Grandison, once we give out a warning letter, typically in the warning letter there would be a date or a time period specified within which the property owner will have to take action. Typically, it's 21 days to a month. If they do not comply with the warning letter within that time frame, the next step for us would be to issue a stop order. And that is when the matter sort of starts to become a little bit more legal and enforceable. So I'd say about a month is what we're looking at for any new signage. Every property owner is different. Some property owners may choose to sort of take that stop order and appeal it in front of SDAB, and then that sort of takes its course. But once that is addressed, and if they still choose not to sort of take it down, then we have the provision of fines and going to court.
Okay, excellent, thank you. I just want to hopefully answer one of my colleague, Councillor Ball's question. When I was involved with Fort McMurray Minor Baseball, this bylaws, as I see it, would not affect the signage sales that we executed while there, because it's within the diamond. I do have one question, though, which becomes discretionary, it sounds like, for bylaw. So if you take the Petro-Canada up in Eagle Ridge there, if signage along the fence, so if you remove the signage that's visible when you're driving down the road, which it sounds like it would be, right up to the edge of the building. When you turn it, when you drive, if you look this way, you're always going to see it. But, to me, that's kind of on the property behind a building and within their space. I'm hoping that would be allowed. I mean, if a person goes looking, you're always going to look for a sign, which is one of the things that Councillor Ball alluded to. If you have signage on the far fence, up at Father Merck, if you're driving down Thickwood Boulevard and look left, you're going to see it. I'm hoping the intent is not to end that. I mean, just the signs that are right on Thickwood Boulevard being turned out to the road. I hope that's what we're talking about.
Through the chair to Councillor Grandison, till the time there is a barrier to entry onto the lot and the sign is not visible from a public street, it would qualify as an internal sign through the definition. Outside of that limit, it would be considered a sign that is illegal and is installed on property without development permits.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you put into this in a short period of time. I appreciate it all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grandison. Councillor Ball?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to just touch on Councillor Grandison's last question. I don't think the answer came through. So we'll use the Petro-Can as an example. We've all seen it. Will that be in compliance or will that not be in compliance?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, as it stands today, the site would be non-compliant.
It'd be non-compliant. So do you hear that, Councillor Grandison?
I did. My question was more specific to there's signage when you go down to the car wash. That's behind the building. I would assume that would be compliant. It's just the signs before the building that would be non-compliant. I believe that's the answer I got.
No.
Yes.
Through the chair
So the what? Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Grandison and Councillor Ball, the signage that is not visible from the public street, and from my understanding, that is the signage that's behind the car wash, that would still be considered interior signage. Anything that's visible from the public street, which is signs along the fence, as you turn left onto, I think it's called Riverstone Ridge, there's signage along that road that can be seen right next to the condominium property. Some of that signage makes it incompliant.
It's non-compliant. All that, that's what I'm trying to understand. I know what it looks like. So all those signs that run along that fence can be seen from the road because you enter from there and they're on the fence and they're third-party advertising. My assumption is they're non-compliant as per the current proposed bylaw.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so I guess that answers your question, Councillor Grandison. They're non-compliant.
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, my understanding is there is signage just before entering car wash that is not visible from public street. only that portion of the sign could be considered compliant in line with the interior identification sign.
Yeah, it's interior identification sign. It's not all the third-party advertising is non-compliant.
My apologies. Through the chair.
Interior, as you said, that's for given directions and so on, correct?
Interior signage, through the chair. The term interior signage refers to signs that are not visible from public street. So any third-party signage that is not visible from public street, and on Petro-Canada side, it is more towards as you enter the car wash right at the end of the lane. Some of that signage could be considered interior signage. Everything outside of that, which is visible from public street, would be considered non-compliant.
Okay, so I guess it's however good your eyesight is. I get it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Bajoko?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I know, I think digital signs are becoming more in most places in the world. And I saw that residents are concerned about them being near the residential properties, which I can understand. So are the rules changing drastically concerning that, or what we have right now is good enough? I tried to see if there's any change. I don't see that.
Through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, digital signage primarily addressing billboards are supposed to be 100 meters away from any residential district. In addition to that, there would be restrictions placed on any of those signs where they will have to turn off lighting from, I think it's 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. in the morning, so that the residential areas close by to those big billboards do not get affected by the lighting and the luminosity of the sign. As it stands right now, there are rules built into this bylaw to address signage close to residential areas.
Okay, but this is for those close to the residential areas, not like the ones we see downtown.
Through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, the rules would apply to all signs, regardless of them being in downtown or up in Thickwood or Eagle Ridge.
But so currently it can be on at any time of the day downtown, or?
Through the chair, currently we do not have approved billboards throughout the region. We do not have billboards were not allowed in the urban service area. We are only
I'm talking about digital billboards. Sorry, I might have confused you. I'm talking about those digital signs.
Through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, digital component is a component. It could form part of any signage these days, but primarily it is seen on billboards or freestanding signs. In case of billboards, the larger signs that we see that are along Highway 63, through the rules, they have to sort of shut down during the night. They have to be 100 meters away from any residential areas. And for freestanding signs, only 20% of the sign component could be digital, which means that the component of the sign, the area of the sign, the digital component of the sign is not going to be big enough to be able to affect residential properties that are close by. In addition to that, the brightness of the sign is also to be controlled through the bylaw. So signs would not be allowed to be overly bright. There's luminosity nets limitations in the bylaw that allow us to ensure that a sign is not overly bright and is not sort of affecting residential areas or residents nearby.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Through the chair to the question, if I can just add a little point of clarity in terms of the restriction on the time on which the billboards can be turned on if they're digital or any digital signage, the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Restriction would be if it's near a residential area and impacting residents, or if it's in a park. But for example, the ones that are on Highway 63, they operate 24 hours, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bajoko. Councillor Cardinal?
Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to ask, do we have a number on how many non-compliant signs there is in our region, or even if in downtown or in Fort Mac?
Through the chair to the question, it seems that we have from our count, there's 27 sites within the urban service area that have non-compliant signs on them currently.
So give me an example of maybe 2 of them, that just for reference, please.
Through the chair to the question, now you're putting me on the spot. A couple of them have been mentioned this evening. Basically, anywhere where there's third-party advertising, anywhere there's paid advertising at the moment, they're technically non-compliant.
Okay, so 26, you said?
There's 27 from our count so far, and it's pretty accurate. There's 27 addresses that have non-compliant signs on them.
Okay, and how often are we like doing this non-compliancy visits or walks or whatever you want to say?
Through the chair to the question, we are typically complaint driven, but for the case of signage, there's been a pretty substantial number of complaints ongoing and repetitive for the same addresses, and also through the land use bylaw presentation that took place at council a couple of years ago. Signage is quite a contentious and talked about piece of the bylaw. So for the purpose of the sign, typically we wouldn't go out and just take it upon ourselves to figure out what was non-compliant unless it was creating an issue. And in this case, we've proactively gone out to understand what the non-compliance issue looks like and how to best address it. So in the case of signage, we did account. Moving forward in terms of enforcement, we will be paying more attention to it than we would in the past. We need to make sure that we're aligning enforcement so that it creates a level playing field that's fair and equitable to all businesses in the region.
Why are we paying more attention to it now than we did in the past?
So through the chair to the question, when we came to council a couple of years ago, the previous administration had presented the land use bylaw. And at that time, there were a lot of questions surrounding signage, and we were tasked essentially to go back and to have further engagement with businesses and stakeholders to better understand what the needs of the businesses are in the region. And that's why there's been a lot more conversation and discussion and engagement. There's been a lot of changes to the proposed bylaw to align with what the community and businesses are wanting in the region.
When an application for a development permit comes in for a sign, how much information are we giving the people to abide by the bylaw? Is it a shared bylaw with them, or is it they do the application and it depend on them to follow the rule?
Through the chair to the question, that is a good question, because right now, the way that the bylaw is written as it stands, the regulations are confusing and they're not consistent throughout the region. And we have different rules for downtown, we have different rules for the urban service area, and different rules for the rural areas. Tonight, as a part of the consolidated signage bylaw, we're proposing that we create the same rules for all areas within the region so that the bylaw itself is easier to understand and it's easier for us to also enforce it.
Oh, okay. So rurally, the bylaws don't pertain to the rural in some area. For some of them, I'm just reading the bylaw now. I'm trying to get a grasp on what you're saying there.
Yeah, no problem. Through the chair to the question, so the previous bylaw, land use bylaw, or the one that's in place today, it actually doesn't have the same rules for all areas in the region. So there's different rules for the rural areas, there's different rules for the urban service area, and then the downtown has its own set of rules. It's created a lot of confusion for businesses, a lot of confusion for sign companies. What we're suggesting tonight and what we're proposing in front of you this evening is that we have the same rules for the entire region. We don't have 3 different sections. We have one section with the same rules for everywhere in the entire region.
Perfect. Are we having more bylaw complaints downtown, Timberley, or Gregoire? Where are we having the most complaints? Where's everybody complaining about the bylaw?
Through the chair, to the question, we get, there's an elevated number of complaints for the downtown area.
Okay. Thank you very much, Samantha. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cardinal. Do we have any other questions from council? I'm not seeing it, so thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Saj. And just to acknowledge, we have received 2 written submissions and support. Debbie Han, owner of Speed Pro Signs, and also, as well as Lonnie Pilgrim, Director of Operations and Maintenance for the Fort McMurray Public School Division. And we have a few registered delegates to speak. I'll invite Bryce Kumka to come forward first, please. And Bryce, if you just say your name and remind you have 5 minutes to present, and please remain seated for questions afterwards. In case no one knows who you are.
Thank you very much. My name is Bryce Kumka. I'm a local business owner here in Fort McMurray, specifically in the downtown. And I think the bylaw that's before you folks this evening, I could sum it up as the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that it's compliant for the whole region, which I think is very important. As Acting Director Hyatt has said, it's difficult right now because there's no consistency between the different areas within our municipality, those being rural, the urban service area, and then the downtown has its own set of rules. And I think consolidating those and having them consistent is very important. I think that some of the prescriptive and restrictive parts of the bylaw, I think will have some unintended consequences. Councillor Ball had made a comment of, if there's advertising, but it's at a sports field, it's exempt. But then if it's in a private business, then it isn't. And I think that inconsistency will cause a lot of challenges for businesses, because we're the ones that support the teams. And if our ability to advertise is restricted, but then there's still a need, it becomes difficult to support that in the long run. So I think there needs to be maybe some more thought on that if it's specific to a location. And then the other part that I'm concerned about is the proximity to residential neighborhoods. Like, we don't want billboards in everyone's backyards, but right now there's a number of particular billboards that would be non-compliant based on the 100-meter distance requirements that are there now. And there's a lot of numbers in the bylaw. There's 30 meters for traffic signals. There's 800 meters from a highway. There's 100 meters from a residential neighborhood. Like, there's just a lot of seemingly arbitrary numbers that are getting thrown around with respect to the signs. And I guess the other thing that when I read the bylaw that I was concerned about and I didn't have any clarity was signs that are currently located on municipal land under a lease situation. Are they subject to different rules, or do they have to be removed as well? Because there's a number of pylon signs, as Councillor Duggar referred to them, or freestanding signs that aren't physically on the business's premise. They're on municipal land, but therefore they're not compliant with the current bylaw either, because they're not advertising the businesses that are located on that premise because it's municipal land. So in my reading through it a couple of times and participating in the engagement sessions going back to City Center, which is a number of years ago, I think there's just some inconsistencies that still need to be ironed out. And then the application, I'm not at all comfortable with the sign police aspect of the enforcement. That we can't correct everything that's gone on, but if we start doing non-compliant requirements in this community, we got to start tearing buildings down and moving things around. And once we get on this slope, it's a slippery one, I think. So if we start with signs, where do we stop? I guess that's my principal concern.
Thank you, Bryce. And we talk about the signs you meant, because a few councillors, we've been kind of just been thrown around a few times about inward-facing signs. So when you talk about that, we say it's okay for sports fields, but it's not okay for other ones, and maybe it is visible from the street, maybe it's not. So what would your thought be for that? Should it be, if it's your property, it's your inward-facing sign? If it's, but then like you said, talk about Shell Place, that's also municipal property, and those are all inward-facing signs.
There's a limitation on coverage from like what they call a perf sign on a window in the bylaw. So perhaps a partial coverage would be more appropriate than blanketing the whole property. Like sometimes too much is too much, or restricting a setback from a visibility perspective. That would deal with the arbitrary application of whether or not we can see it from the road. Which is a subjective measure, in my opinion.
All right, thank you. Have any other questions from council for Mr. Kumka? Councillor Ball?
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, your comment there about the arbitrary distance, whether you can see it from the road or not, I guess it depends on whether you're Mr. Magoo or someone who's got phenomenal eyesight. So I do like what you said there, that maybe there's a setback and we go with that. That makes sense. I appreciate that comment.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Any other questions for Mr. Kumka? I'm not seeing any. Thanks, Bryce.
You're welcome.
Next, we have another verbal presentation, Robbie Picard. Just for Robbie, if you could give your name for the record, and you have 5 minutes to speak, and if you can remain seated and remain for questions, please.
Hi, I'm Robbie Picard. First of all, I want to start with a compliment, and this will actually segue into what I want to talk about. The best thing I've ever seen this council administration do in the history I've been here is the downtown revitalization grant. There is so many businesses now, and I'll compliment Amanda, and she knows that I don't give compliments easy. It's brilliant. And it's the first time that I've seen a focus on small businesses to make things happen. This isn't a big arena, and the amount of lives that has changed, and it revamped the whole Avenue Coffee area, City Furniture, you name it. That is the most successful thing. So here's my point, okay? I support some of this bylaw. We're Petro-Canada. They're not really my client. I've done some stuff with them, so I'm speaking kind of just as a friend. Who are we to punish probably one of the most successful businesses in this community? They've reinvested it. They came with nothing, and they constantly reinvest. Who cares what they do on their property if they make some money? It is absolutely essential that we reinvest in this community. So I agree with a lot of this. I like some of this, but the small, I don't understand, like, first of all, Mac Island can do whatever they want on their property, so can the airport. But Petro, and why does it matter if you see it from the road? Isn't that the whole point? If I'm paying for a sign, I want people to see it from the road. I'm all for cleaning up the signs. I'm all for making them better. I'm all for improving them. But I think, like any business out of these 37 that have set up, they should be allowed to find a way to be compliant now. Second of all, we're not all equal. The Conklin has completely different problems than we do. If some business mechanic in Conklin could put a sign on the side of the highway that'll get him some work when someone's driving a Lac La Biche, why are we stopping them? There's that little Thai place. They're struggling right now. What is the harm if they put some signs around? I think we have to open up the idea to helping businesses succeed in this community and stop restricting them. Yeah, out of these 37, like, have we gone and met with them to see what we can do to make this law a little easier? Now, the rest of it I kind of like. I think there's a lot of good work in here, and this is a start, but we can't penalize businesses, especially the ones that constantly reinvest in our community. And I'm a big supporter of the Petro-Canada. We just opened the Tempo in Gregoire, and I went over there today, and they don't have to help us. They give us a bunch of stuff and helped us with our new business. Like, you can't get a better family in this community than them. Why are we punishing them? So that's my statement.
Thank you, Robbie. Councillor Boussier?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Robbie. What do you mean by Mac Island does anything they want?
Mac Island can advertise all over their building. They can, every inch of Mac Island, you can buy third-party advertising. Why can't, if I have private property?
Inside the building.
Inside the building, in the baseball diamond, and the golf course, wherever they want. Same with the airport. You know, you can, every arena inside, you can do what you want. What's the harm of advertising on my private property if I have private property?
But I think, maybe Amanda can correct me, but if I have a business, I can advertise whoever I want inside my business as well.
Okay, now, but what's this from the road? That's what I'm concerned with. So if I pull up to Petro-Canada right now, sorry, apologies, through the chair or whatever, but from the road. So that's my question.
I guess I'm just, hopefully admin can, like, Mac Island was accused of advertising a while ago, something on their sign. but my understanding is their freestanding sign only advertises, and I've driven by it a bunch of times, Robbie, and it's only what's happening inside that building or on the McDonald Island grounds, which is a permitted use.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is in the baseball diamond at Mac Island, right? They can do whatever they want inside there. They can put whatever signs they want on the baseball diamond, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Which is still allowed under this new bylaw, as long as the sign is facing in.
Okay, so what about Petro-Canada, if they have a sign that's the roads, you see from the road, they have to take it down? Because that's my confusion. Otherwise I'm fine with all of it. Through the chair, sorry.
Through the chair to the question. Point of clarity. And to confirm what Councillor Boussier had said, on Mac Island, the sign, the podium sign, the digital sign is in fact first party, which is basically any activities that are occurring on site or in the building. The interior signage in the building, we don't regulate that anywhere in the region. And in terms of the interior signage for the baseball diamonds or any fields, we also don't regulate that. In terms of the example that was given with the gas station, the way that the current bylaw is worded, there wouldn't be any third-party advertising allowed there, period. In terms of the proposed bylaw, we're also suggesting that there wouldn't be any permissible advertising along that fence, for example, that is visible by the road. If you're coming into the site and you are accessing the car wash, there is sort of that corner area that is not visible to the street at all. In the case of that type of signage, there is a bit of a gray area which it could be permissible or considered permissible, yes. But the intention really is no third-party advertising on fences, which primarily the advertising that happens to be on that site is on the fences, which is visible by the roadway. The whole confusion around the internal versus external, it was really primarily written to accommodate fields, sport fields that have the ability to sell third-party advertising that has primarily an audience of the viewers of that sporting event.
So I guess that's my point, right? The airport can do third-party advertising and all their Pattison signs all the way up when you drive, and I understand that the airport's a separate thing. I get it. As a private business person, like for instance, we've just opened the Tempo, it's doing very well. I would love to make some ad revenue on signs, and they want to see them from the road. Like, I mean, when you invest millions of dollars of your own private funds to make a business happen, you need to make money. So I support regulations, I support cleaning them up. I do not support telling private businesses what to do on their property, regardless of where it's visible from. And I think the Mac Island example, like that's not, if Mac Island can do it or the airport can do it, so should private business. Within reason, I do believe that some signs should be cleaned up.
Just through the chair, just to clarify that the business, like Robbie just mentions, there's nothing preventing Robbie from putting a billboard or a freestanding sign on his business and advertising or generating income from that method, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what would be wrong with through the chair to Robbie, what's wrong with that, Robbie, where it's clean, it's consistent, it's the same advertising in the sense you don't have 1 2x4 and then you got a piece of plywood and another advertising on a fence. Like this it would just clean everything up, wouldn't it? And make it more consistent. It'd beautify the city.
Through the chair to council with you know what? I agree with that. And I think as long as the businesses like Petro have a chance to upgrade and improve, I'm a little worried about seeing from the road. But now that you mentioned the other part, yeah, I'm okay with that. I think that's a reasonable thing. And I think a lot of good work has gone into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Boussier. Councilor Dogar, you have a question for Robbie?
Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, Rebecca. It's a very fine recommendation. You have made it the same things. I said it probably in my presentation. If there's no violation or distraction to the traffic, and there is no objection to the other residents' neighborhood, then we should not be objecting removing of the signs. And third party, if people want to make some money.
Yeah, Councilor Dogar, just if questions for the delegate, we're just not going to debate it yet. We can debate later, but no, it's okay. Go ahead if you have any questions for the presenter. Councilor Benjogo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Mr. Pickard is into science and wonders. So I'm wondering, I'm just looking for some feedback from you. How do we compare in your assessment to other similar cities? Because I certainly am I like science for sure, and anything that would promote businesses and promote people if they're doing running for election. I don't mind. Yeah.
So upon doing a lot of research and checking out, I think it varies. Like bluntly, I think it has a lot to do with income. Smaller centers that don't have sort of the industry base, they do whatever to survive, and their rules are a little more slack about signage because like they're trying to maintain their tax base. We're in an interesting spot. I looked around a lot, and to Councillor Bousset's point, yeah, there's a few signs that could be a bit more sightly, but as long as the intention is to work with the people there, not penalize them, and make this a community that supports business, I'm okay with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Benjogo. Councilor Cardinal, you have a question for the presenter?
Hey, Robbie. Thanks for the presentation. Do you think that a bunch of signs, third party, of bylaw passes, and there's going to be a whole bunch of signs put up from people that can afford it, and more from people that can afford it, and you know the grass gets covered with signs, signs on private properties. How do you think that's all going to look?
I'm not overly concerned because as that's sort of what's happened to this point. People have just done whatever they had to do. I think the regulation will maybe stop some of that, but also will encourage people to do the right thing, and it might help businesses. Okay, you want to do third-party signs, fine, invest in a digital on your property, and here's some regulations. Just, I think we really need to look at like Conklin, Anzac, Chip, for that instance. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Chip, and it's a different community, and you know, getting the word out there isn't always as easy as getting the word out here. So I think the one thing there should be here, to your point about cash, I think as a municipality, we should look at a way to make signs affordable for businesses starting up, and I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'm kind of overreaching on that, but there's so many, like my roofer, he put a few signs up around town. He got in trouble, but those signs got him so much business that he was able to survive the summer. I think we, as a community, we need to have a little more compassion for small business and what they're trying to do. And it's not everybody can afford marketing, especially me because I'm super expensive, but the best in town. But regardless of that, it's we should make a bit of a playing field. Sorry about the plug.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor Cardinal. Do we have any other questions for the presenter? I'm not seeing any, so thank you, Robbie. Do you have any other members who would like to members of the gallery would like to come forward and present? Not seeing any, so I think at this time, council will take a 10-minute break. Welcome back, everyone. We'll continue. Does council have any further questions for administration? And just a reminder, once the public hearing is closed, there's no further questions or information gathering. I have a question. Amanda, if you want. I'm just curious, as we've gone through the discussion, it seems pretty unclear. We talk about inward-facing signage. So if it's not visible from the road, the inward-facing signage on private property is okay. Sorry.
That's okay. Through the chair, to the question, the intention behind the inward-facing signage was to address sporting fields primarily. There will be cases, as there is in any bylaw in any community, where there is some gray area. So for the purpose of what we're proposing this evening, in terms of the inward signs, if I can just get a definition, it might be a little bit more helpful here. So in terms of sort of, I guess, it's as simple terms as we can put it, an internal sign is a sign on the interior of a site not intended to be viewed from the outside / public. We characterize these signs by barrier to entry. So for an example of a baseball diamond, there's a barrier to entry. A sign that happens to be on the interior of a site but is still positioned or erected to be viewable by the public does not qualify as an internal sign. So essentially the audience of that sign is internal to that site. Examples of internal signs are, and I already gave those, soccer fields, baseball field, diamonds, which are only intended to be viewed by the spectators of that sport, not the general public.
Okay, so my question is, we have a few car washes in town, and once you pass a certain point, you're internal, you're a customer already committed to going to the car wash. Your pass is, you can't see the sign from the road. You're past the point of no return. You're a customer inside their private property with an inward facing sign that only you can see, and you're already a customer.
Through the chair to the question, so in that situation, if the signs are not visible by the main roadway, then they would be, in this case, it could be interpreted that they would be internal to the site itself.
Okay, that's where I think there was confusion with council, and because you are a customer inside a private property. Okay, perfect. That's all my questions. Do any councilors have any other questions for administration? Councilor Benjoko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To your question, so if a sign is visible, what's the danger? What's the risk?
Through the chair to the question, in terms of the signage bylaw, there needs to be clear regulations. So essentially, if a sign is then visible by the public, the general public from a street, then the question is, why bother having regulations at all?
My question is, why the regulation?
Through the chair to the question, we're trying to essentially create regulations so that we ensure that there's orderly development and that there is an alignment with beautification efforts, that we're not cluttering the community up, that everything looks clean, presentable, and respectable really as a community, and that we take pride in how it looks.
I appreciate that, but for instance, the Petro-Canada, if you are driving to the Stony Creek, you can see some signs. So I hope we are not going to be telling them someone is passing by and they see your sign. So, I mean, it's within their premises, but if you are driving by, you can see it. And I don't see anything wrong in that. Thank you.
Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
I just threw the chair to Councillor Banjoko. There is a legal principle in signage, and it's called proliferation of use. And the courts have said that it's a reasonable planning exercise to look at proliferation. And when asked to define what that means, well, if I have one gas station on a four-corner intersection, that's probably good. If I have two, well, that's probably good too. But when I get to four, maybe I've got too many. So it's a hard one to precisely define, but there is a point at which sometimes you get too much of a good thing, and that's probably where some of this is directed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Joko. Councilor Grandison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify, because I had a conversation with Matt at the break, and I just wanted to. One of the things that I didn't take into account that was pointed out to me is this new bylaw allows, like Petro-Canada, for example, to erect freestanding signs that weren't permitted in the past, and actually creates an even greater opportunity for revenue and advertising than exists on the fence. The cleaning up of the fence, inward facing, outward facing, et cetera, is just that, to clean up the sign. So I do appreciate the amount of effort that's gone into this. And I certainly feel satisfied with the clarity to your question, Mr. Mayor, in terms of you know, my concern was more from not putting our bylaw officers in a situation where they had to guess what the regulations were. And it sounds like, you know, there'll be more clarity for that, and that would be very much appreciated, I'm sure, by them and all of the businesses and people in town. So again, thank you for that, and I do appreciate all of the clarity.
Thank you, Councilor Grandison. Do we have any other questions for administration from council? I'm not seeing any. Does administration have anything further to add?
Through the chair, I would like to say that the intention of this portion of the land use bylaw, specifically in relation to signage, isn't to further restrict businesses. The intention was to make it so that we do allow for third-party advertising, but that there's some regulations set in place to ensure that we are aligning with beautification efforts that are happening across the municipality. And I just want to, in closing, say that there are opportunities for third-party advertising, which would include billboards, freestanding signs, and roof signs as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And with that, we have we encompassed with the land use bylaw. When that comes back, this will be part of that?
Through the chair, that's correct. Tonight, we're looking at this signage section. So if it does pass tonight, those regulations would be the most current that will be followed by the region. When we come back with the entire bylaw, that section for signage will be reflected in the new bylaw.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, I can declare this public hearing closed at 8:24 p.m. Coming to a public hearing, we now have the second and third readings of bylaw number 24/002, land use bylaw regarding consolidated signage regulations and council consideration. Can someone make the motion for the second reading of bylaw number 24/002? Councilor Grandison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that bylaw number 24-002 being an amendment to the land use bylaw 99/059 to repeal the existing parts 7A, 7B, and 7C and replace with the new part 12 be read a second time.
Thank you, Councilor Grandison. Who seconded that? And thank you for seconding that, Councilor Boussier. I'll call for a vote. Councilor Cardinal?
I can't get on my thing. I'm not for the bylaw.
Okay. That's.
Thanks.
And that's carried 7-2. Are there any other debate or discussion points or comments from council? Can I have someone make the motion for the third reading? Councilor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I move that bylaw number 24/002 be read a third and final time. Thank you.
Thank you. Can someone second that motion? Thank you, Councilor Bussier. Are there any other debate, discussion points, or comments of council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote.
Against.
Thank you, Councilor Cardinal.
Thanks.
And that is passed 7-2 again. Thank you. And that motion is carried. Next, we have bylaw number 24/003, fees, rates, and charges bylaw amendment, which is being presented for the second and third readings tonight. I'd like to invite Laura Farquharson, Corporate Services, to introduce the report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Lori Farquharson, Chief Financial Officer. Administration is requesting minor amendments to the previously approved fees, rates, and charges bylaw as presented to Council on November 28, 2023. Due to a version control error, the following four schedules represented some fees from the prior year rates. The schedules requiring adjustment are as follows. Schedule L, Safety Codes Permitting. The private sewage disposal is to be removed from the bylaw as it is no longer a service offered by the municipality. In addition, the renewal fees for building discipline is to be increased from $725 to $925 per $1,000 of project value. The municipality on average has fees and charges significantly lower than other jurisdictions in the province. Where a resident or business receives direct benefit for a service, fee, or charge, the result should be cost neutral. As such, the RMWB is increasing fees annually to achieve a cost neutral position for the direct benefits of services. Schedule M, solid waste, Schedule N, water, and Schedule P, wastewater, had a few fees that should have been increased by 5 to 15% as presented in the red text associated schedule, which were omitted in the November 28, 2023. This amendment also includes the removal of the thawing of frozen service fee from Schedule N, as this service is no longer applicable. Administration is requesting approval to amend the bylaw to include the rates that should have formed part of the November 28th submission, which are summarized in the attached schedules highlighted in red. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lord. Do we have any questions from council, from administration? Councilor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you. I just wanted to understand, or I want to understand if it was an error or just an omission, or how did that happen?
It was an error. There was a version control problem, so we had people that were updating it from a few different sources, and then the final version had a few fees that weren't uploaded properly, and we discovered them after the fact.
So we missed that adjustment for this period of about 2-3 months, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, sorry, I'm not quite following it.
So this should have been implemented in January.
No, through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, most of the fees are not effective until April 1st of 2024. That's why we're here in front of you today, to adjust the schedule to ensure that come April 1st, when all the fees are effective, then they will be presented appropriately and aligned with the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So no revenues were lost. No. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Benjoko. Councilor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and thank you for the presentation, Laurie. So When you say private sewage disposal is to be removed from the bylaw as it is no longer a service offered by the Safety Codes branch, I'm not sure what you mean, because I'm aware there's still fields, holding tanks, septic tanks still being used in the rural areas. How does that?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, I'm afraid I don't know the particulars of from the business area. There is a representative from Environmental Services here this evening. He may be able to speak to that, or we'll have to come back and provide a response later.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, I'll send the question in, Laurie. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Do we have any questions from council for administration? Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. So I'm aware that a motion was made not to increase ice fees. This is the question I asked at the review. So am I able to get a comparison of where we are at for cost recovery and ice fees in comparison to other municipalities in the province?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, we don't have the data as far as cost recovery is concerned. This is a type of a service that wouldn't necessarily be seen as a direct support. Like if your water, your wastewater, that sort of thing, that's where we need to be cost neutral. When it comes to recreation, there is subsidization that happens within the municipalities, similar to transit. It's a service we provide. When we spoke at the information session, I understood that you had also wanted to know what the increase in overall fees would have been had we proceeded with the proposed 2024 rates. Was that something you were still interested in?
Yeah, if you have that information.
I do. So for the 2023 rates, the total is 2.15 million for the year for 2023. Had we increased the rates for 2024 as of September 1st of 2024, we believe that based on those trends, we would have had an additional revenue of $237,724.
Okay, and we don't have any benchmarking with other municipalities, is what you explained to me, right?
We have some benchmarking. I may have to ask Director Smith to assist me with that, but his team has a significant amount of analysis, which is why we came to council in 2022 asking to increase the fees, because a lot of work had been done back then when we were looking at the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Do we have any other questions for administration? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Lord. Do we have any other delegates for this item?
We have no registered delegates, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have someone make the motion for the second reading? Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that bylaw number 24/003, being an amendment to the fees, rates, and charges, be read a second time.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Ball, for seconding that. Any other debate, discussion, or comments from council? I'll call for a vote. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I have someone make the motion for the third and final reading? Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that bylaw number 24/003 be read a third and final time.
Thank you. And thank Councillor Boussier for seconding that motion. Are there any debate, discussion points, or comments from council? I'm not seeing any. I'll call for a vote. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have the report on the capital budget amendments. I'd like to invite Laura Farquharson to remain seated. For Corporate Services to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Lori Farquharson, Chief Financial Officer. Administration is submitting 3 capital budget amendments for your consideration and approval. Council is the approving authority for capital budgets as per the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Policy FIN 160. The capital budget amendments will result in a net increase of $1,416,304 to the 2024 and thereafter capital budget as outlined in the budget net change summary. The first project is the Fort Chipewyan Airside Pavement Rehabilitation Construction Project, which requires a cash flow adjustment only. An internal transfer of aggregate supplies of $685,471 was completed in 2023, in addition to an outstanding invoice of $245,282. Administration is requesting a cash flow adjustment of $931,000 from the 2024 to be carried back to 2023 to cover additional costs that were incurred in 2023. The second project is the Fort McKay Dock Seasonal Design. The project was initiated and approved by a previous council. After the community engagement involving representatives from Public Works and IRR, it was determined that the residents of Fort McKay did not support the project. Administration is requesting to cancel the project and release the remaining budget of $83,696. The third and final project is the Fort McMurray Water Treatment Plant Cross-Flow Clarifier Life Cycle Construction. The tender pricing came in over double the estimated cost to repair the West Clarifier flocculation and recarbonation tanks. A factor in this increase was due to the complexity of assessing the tanks. Administration is requesting a cash flow adjustment of $500,000 from the 2025 into 2024 and an increase to the total budget of $1.5 million to complete the repairs this year. In summary, administration is requesting that the 2024 capital budget amendments as summarized on Attachment 1, 2024 capital budget amendments, project cash flow, cancellation and amendment, net impact dated April 12, 2024 be approved, and that the revised cash flow of capital projects as summarized on Attachment 2, 2024 capital budget amendments, project cash flow cancellation and amendment, cash flow summary dated March 12, 2024 be approved. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lori. When was the Fort McKay engagement done on the dock where they weren't supportive of the project?
Through the chair to the chair, I'm not 100% sure. There is extensive information on email. Mr. Smith, are you able to speak to that?
Through the chair to the question, I want to say it was maybe 6 to 8 months ago, was prior to the fire, that we did do the engagement with the community, both the First Nations and the Métis, and they decided at that point in time they did not want a temporary dock like you would see down at Snai. What they want is an actual boat launch with a permanent dock.
That was my second question. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have any other questions for administration? Councilor Dogar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is that this first project is of Fort McKay, Fort Chipewyan, and the second one of Fort McKay. Is there any input from the concerned councillors in this or not? Because it is a basically engineering job, and Madam, you are from finance and you are presenting it. You see, information we are getting is a third-hand information. So is it possible that we can listen to the particular councillors? You know, Fort Chipewyan, Cardinal is the authority for me. Fort McKay, Loretta is authority for me. Is it possible for this way or not?
Not right now. Right now, it's just questions for administration, Councilor Doga. There's a time later on for any kind of debate with and questions of councilors.
Okay, for future purpose, we can keep such like things in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be a few minutes. Are there any other questions for administration? I'm not seeing any. Do we have any delegates this item?
We have no delegates, thank you.
Can I have someone make the motion? Councilor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I move that the 2024 capital budget amendments as summarized on attachment 1, 2024 capital budget amendments, project cash flow, cancellation and amendment, net impact dated March 12, 2024 be approved, and that the revised cash flow of capital projects as summarized on attachment 2, 2024 capital budget amendments, project cash flow, cancellation and amendment, cash flow summary dated March 12, 2024 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for a second, Councilor Grandison. Are there any debate points, discussion of council? Councilor Cardinal?
No, I was just trying to second, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Cardinal. Are there any other discussion or comments from council? Not seeing a call for a vote. Councilor Cardinal, your camera went off there.
Sorry, there you are.
Thanks. Are you in favor, Councilor Cardinal? Yeah. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Marcy Cho, Kinwest Compton, have a good evening. That's meeting adjourned for tonight.